Hi, I'm Zoltan, and today I want to show you my rice cooker modification. So if you have watched some of my previous videos, you might have known that I quite like rice cookers. They are very versatile and efficient cooking appliances, but they are not perfect. So if you want the highest efficiency and more user convenience, I added this timer. So I basically replaced the typical one button that you have on a rice cooker with this timer. So in a typical rice cooker, you push the button and it cooks, and when the rice is finished, it will switch to simmering mode, not to simmering, but warm mode. But it will use the full power until the rice is cooked. That's why if you want to reduce the power consumption, you can manually switch to warm mode for the simmering phase, like I showed in my previous videos. But you have to do it, so it's some more manual work that you have to do, and especially if you want to cook something with long simmering times, like kidney beans that I cook right here, you typically need to switch on and off the rice cooker, because the simmering power, or the warm power mode, is like 40 watts, which is not sufficient to keep the beans at 100 degrees for longer time, so it will cool down slowly. That's why you have to give it like a boost every 20 minutes or so. And with this rice cooker modification now, the idea is that with this timer, you set the time to boil depending on the quantity you cooked. So in this case, I put in around 2 liters of water with half a kg of beans. So it was around 8 cups. So I put slightly more than this, like 26 minutes. And so it should go off right now. It's the half an hour, approximately 26 minutes is over. So as you see here, the steam is already coming out. So the beans are cooking, and now the rice cooker is not switched off completely, but it's in simmering mode, which is basically the same as the warm mode in the normal rice cooker, but I doubled the heating power. So instead of 40 watts, if you look here, you can see now that it's using 80 watts. And this 80 watts is actually sufficient to keep it close to 100 degrees for 1 or 2 hours. So what I do now, this took like approximately half an hour, and after 1.5 hours more, so in total 2 hours cooking time, the beans will be done, and I just can unplug the rice cooker and it will be done. So this is the rice cooker modification. I also replaced the magnetic switch that is only like it's switches off, but it won't switch on again, and it switches off again at like slightly above 100 degrees. So I replaced that one with a bimetal switch that switches off at around 140-150 degrees Celsius, so that I can also do frying with the rice cooker that I'll show you in another clip right now. And it will switch on again if it cools down approximately 10 degrees. So that means you can do deep frying also with the rice cooker, or also baking. That you can do. So you can basically do almost any dish with the rice cooker, and it's automated and very efficient, because the 80 watts that are here is exactly the power that you want for the simmering mode, and it reduces your bill, your electricity bill, and is very easy to use. So after a total of 2 hours cooking, so half an hour bring it to boil point and then 1.5 hours simmering, the bean should be done. It consumed a total of 0.44 kilowatt hours. So now I can unplug the rice cooker and we can check. Be done. they are done. If you want to fry or deep fry with a modified rice cooker, you can either put the timer on so it's permanently on, or you also just set a timer so that just in case you forget it, it will switch off automatically. And then you wait until the oil is hot enough, or the rice cooker switches to simmering mode when it hits like the 140 degrees at the thermal switch. So now you see it's powering at full power, which is approximately 650 watts. And so I put already one potato piece inside to test if it's hot enough, and the oil should be hot enough now. So then always use either plastic or wooden utensils to steer, otherwise you'll scratch the anti-stick surface of the pot. Yeah, and then you can close it up again. Okay, so to deep fry approximately 370 grams of fries in fried form. It took approximately half an hour and 3 loads with a rice cooker and consumed 0.32 kilowatt hours. Like a sauce, like a tomato sauce in the modified rice cooker, you just put in a timer. It's not so important at what time, so I typically put like 20 minutes so that in case you forget it, it switches off automatically. And then I'm now shallow frying onions and saucy, which is like soya minced meat, but like basically it's plant-based and half the price of beef minced meat. And yeah, so it typically wants quite a lot of oil to get a nice taste. So this is oil, onions, a bit of garlic, a bit of soy sauce, and the minced soya. So I do a bit of frying, and then I'll add the other ingredients, the tomatoes, the mushrooms. Yeah, so after a couple of minutes of frying, I'll add now the other ingredients. So I have the tomato and some carrots. I have the mushrooms. Some sweet maize together with the liquid. Then also the remaining liquid that I used for soaking the minced soy, which is mostly like water and soy sauce and a bit of garlic. Then tomato paste. And some herbs. And then in the meantime also the pasta has boiled, so I'll switch it manually. So this is an unmodified rice cooker, so I'll switch it to warm mode manually. Approximately 20 minutes that I set here. Steam is coming out, so it's boiled. In the case of the tomato sauce, you can already unplug it. So if you switch it off, it's switching to 80 watts. But I'm unplugging it completely because it's finished, and you see it's like for the approximately 2 liters it consumed 0.27 kilowatt hours. So this is a finished tomato sauce. Yeah, so I implemented 4 modifications to the rice cooker. So one is to add this timer, which sets the time to boil. So depending on the amount of water you put in, you set the timer here, and then when the timer is out, it will switch to simmering mode. So this is one modification. Right now it's an external timer, but I already found a version that is also used in EPCs that can be directly mounted to the case of the rice cooker. So this is modification 1. Then for normal rice cookers, you have one 40-watt heating element here. This is for the keep warm function, but the 40 watts is enough to keep the rice at like around 60-70 degrees. So for a keep warm function, it's fine, but I want the keep warm function to basically function as a simmering function, so I need more power. So that's why they doubled it. So this is now in total of 80 watts, which is sufficient to keep the contents of the inner pot close to 100 degrees for 1 to 2 hours. So there's still some slight cooling down, so I might increase it slightly, the power, but it already works quite well. And then a third modification is just to put in a slightly higher thermal fuse here. So I think this is like 170 degrees Celsius to allow for proper frying also. And then I switched the magnetic switch in the middle here with bimetal thermal switches. So initially my plan was to have 2 thermal switches that are also somehow coupled to the inner pot. So this would press to the inner pot like the magnetic switch of a typical rice cooker does. And I would have one thermal switch that would switch off at 100 degrees and another one that would switch off at like 140 for frying. And then my initial plan was that it would switch on and off to keep the 100 degrees for cooking, for simmering. But that didn't work out so well. So basically these sensors, they are not super accurate. So typically I have like plus minus 5 degrees switching temperature accuracy. You can get them slightly better, like plus minus 3 degrees. But they also have like a hysteresis. So basically if they switch off at 100 degrees, they only switch on typically like at 70 degrees. So this is too big of a difference. So you wouldn't keep simmering. So that's why I removed this completely and instead now have one thermal switch only, this one, which switches off at 140 degrees. So this is for keeping the fry temperature. And then it already switches back on at 130 degrees. So it keeps the frying temperature between 130 and 140. The actual oil temperature might be slightly different because I'm measuring it like in the inside of this case, but it should be sufficient to keep the oil hot enough for frying. And yeah, instead of keeping the idea that I originally had, like switching on and off for the boiling, I just have now these 2 heating elements that if they run constantly keeps it more or less on the boiling temperature. So you just like I said, you just set your timer for the time to boil. So for instance, if you boil like a half a kg of beans or something, you would set it to half an hour. After half an hour, you will the beans with the water will have boiled. This will switch off, and then it will automatically switch to powering these 2, and then you can. So like the heat up time would typically would be the half an hour, and then it would leave it for another 1.5 hours for a total of 2 hours cooking time, and then the beans will be done without any additional input and with minimal power consumption. Yeah, so this is the modification, and it might make sense to close this up with like a sheet of metal. I'll see later. But this is the current setup. One change I did compared to the previous clip that I showed you, the internals, is that I moved the bimetal thermal switch to be inside the casing where typically the magnetic switch is, which is here, which is pushed with a spring to the bottom of the pot, because at the previous position the switch would not limit the temperature of the oil inside the pot. So if the inside of the rice cooker itself would be too hot, it will switch off. But the oil temperature could already be quite high. So I did some testing, and the oil temperature rose above 200 degrees. So it was basically the position of the switch was sufficient to keep the rice cooker itself safe, that it's not melting, but you could get too high temperatures of the food, of the oil. So that's why I moved it inside here. And I did some testing today, and it properly limited the temperatures of the oil, so it didn't get too hot. So it switched off at around 150 degrees, and then switched off again slightly below 130. Yeah, and one final legal reminder is, so this is all with AC power, high volt, or 220 volts. So it's dangerous and should not be done copied at home. So this whole thing is just for educational demonstration purposes.